Do this, and she will come back crawling to you. Female psychology. There's a moment after she walks away when everything feels still, almost too still. The silence, the absence, the sudden emptiness. They can make a man restless, searching for a way to fix what's gone wrong. But this is where most lose themselves. In the chase, in the noise, in the effort to reclaim what has already drifted. The Stoic sees things differently. He understands that control is not found in reaction, but in composure. And so he waits, not out of weakness, but from understanding. When a woman leaves, she expects emotion. She expects pursuit. What unsettles her most is peace, the kind that doesn't beg or bargain. That quiet strength speaks louder than any apology or explanation ever could. In the eyes of someone who once knew your energy, calmness becomes power. It unsettles her curiosity. It makes her wonder what changed, what she might have misjudged. The more you center yourself, the more nature restores its balance. Stoicism teaches that what is meant for you cannot be lost, and what resists you should not be chased. This isn't indifference, it's awareness. It's the understanding that love, when genuine, doesn't respond to pressure. It responds to space, to oscillance, to self-respect. The paradox of attraction is that it often returns when you no longer need it to. Your peace becomes the magnet, not your effort. So, this isn't about tricks, games, or revenge. It's about alignment. It's about remembering that your worth doesn't depend on who chooses you, but on how deeply you choose your own calm. When you stop trying to bring her back, you begin to bring yourself back to your balance, your dignity, your quiet strength. And from that place, everything that's meant to return eventually does. In this video, we'll explore that truth step by step, from the stillness after she leaves to the quiet return that only peace can invite. 1. The stillness after she leaves. When she's gone, the first thing you'll notice isn't the loss, it's the silence. It's in the spaces where her voice used to be, in the pauses between your thoughts. That silence can feel unbearable at first, as though the world has stopped moving. But if you stay with it long enough, you begin to see something else hidden beneath it. Stillness. And in that stillness lies truth. A man once sat alone in his apartment. After a long relationship ended, every instinct told him to reach out, to explain, to fix things before they faded. But he didn't. Instead, he chose to sit with his thoughts. The silence became a mirror, showing him not what he'd lost, but what he had avoided seeing. His own restlessness, his dependency, his fear of being alone. Slowly, he began to understand that the pain wasn't just from her leaving. It was from his resistance to accept that she was gone. In Stoic thought, peace comes when we stop arguing with reality. When we accept what is, we free ourselves from the suffering born of desire. The desire for control, for certainty, for return. The stillness after she leaves is not punishment. It's a teacher. It reminds you to find harmony within yourself, even when something you value has fallen away. So instead of filling the quiet with noise, allow it to settle. Let detachment cleanse the space she once occupied. Tranquility is not the absence of emotion. It is the discipline of remaining whole within it. Over time, the silence that once felt empty begins to feel sacred. You'll find that freedom isn't in getting her back. It's in no longer needing her to complete your peace. 2. What her silence truly means. When she stops reaching out, when the messages stop coming, most men hear rejection. They feel the ache of absence and assume it means she no longer cares. But silence has many meanings, and most of them are not spoken out of anger, but confusion, reflection, or pride. Stoicism reminds us not to rush into judgment. What appears as loss might simply be space, and space often holds the answers we once tried to force. A woman's silence is rarely just about words. It's often her way of regaining balance, of stepping back to understand herself. Perhaps she felt unseen, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't name. In the quiet, she's not necessarily moving away. She's listening to her own thoughts. This is why reacting with panic or pressure only deepens the distance. The more noise you create, the less she hears herself, and the less likely she is to hear you. A stoic mind does not chase noise. It listens to silence. It asks, "What is this moment asking of me?" rather than, "How do I end it?" Her silence may be testing your patience, or it may be guiding you toward acceptance. Either way, your role is not to break it, but to understand it. True discipline is staying centered when uncertainty surrounds you. In time, her quietness can reveal more than her words ever did. It shows you whether your connection was built on dependence or virtue, on desire or understanding. When you learn to remain tranquil in her absence, you stop needing her silence tuned in order to feel peace. And that is where strength begins. When her quiet no longer disturbs your harmony, but deepens it. 3. Why distance tests? More than love, distance does something that words and promises cannot. It reveals what truly holds two people together. When space appears, emotions lose their constant reassurance, and what remains is the quiet test of character. In that silence, desire and attachment are separated from genuine connection. Stoicism teaches that love built on virtue endures beyond proximity, while love rooted in possession fades when distance arrives. When someone pulls away, we often interpret it as rejection. Yet, distance is not always loss. It's often a mirror reflecting our inner state. It shows how disciplined our emotions are, how much control we truly have over desire, and how peacefully we can coexist with uncertainty. If love depends entirely on closeness, then it was never freedom. It was dependence. But if affection remains, steady without control or contact, it is guided by reason rather than impulse. The Stoic mind understands that we cannot hold what was never ours to keep. Detachment does not mean coldness. It means clarity, the ability to love without clinging, to care without needing. Distance then becomes a teacher of virtue, patience, restraint, and resilience. It calls us to return to harmony within ourselves, rather than seeking balance through another. When we meet distance with calm acceptance, something shifts. We no longer see it as punishment, but as purification, armament that strips away illusions and leaves only what is true. Tranquility grows when we stop demanding that love always remain within reach. The freedom that comes from this acceptance is quiet but powerful. In the end, distance doesn't weaken love. It reveals whether love was ever strong enough to exist without control. 4. The power of doing nothing. When things fall apart, the human instinct is to act, to send a message, to explain, to fix. The silence feels unnatural, almost wrong, and our emotions convince us that movement must equal progress. Yet, the Stoic sees the opposite. He understands that sometimes the wisest action is restraint, and the most powerful gesture is stillness. Doing nothing is not the same as indifference. It is the discipline of letting time and truth reveal what force cannot. When emotions are unsettled, action taken too quickly becomes reaction, a form of surrender to desire and fear. Most people rush to fill the gap left by distance, not realizing that this rush often deepens the divide. To do nothing is to allow clarity to return, to let reason rise above impulse. In relationships, silence can be medicine if received with patience. When you choose not to chase, not to argue, not to justify, you create space for both people to see things as they are without distortion. This is where harmony begins again, not through control, but through acceptance. Virtue grows when you resist the pull to interfere with what needs to unfold naturally. The power of doing nothing lies in trust. Trust in time, in reason, and in the quiet process of detachment. It teaches resilience because it demands that you hold steady while uncertainty tests your peace. It also teaches freedom because when you stop forcing outcomes, you free yourself from dependence on them. So when everything in you wants to act, pause. When silence feels unbearable, stay with it. Let stillness do its quiet work. What is meant to return will find its way, not because you chased it, but because you stood calmly enough for it to recognize where peace lives. 5. How absence shapes respect. Absence changes how people see each other. When someone is constantly available, their presence becomes ordinary, part of the background of daily comfort. But when they step back, even quietly, a certain awareness begins to grow. What was once taken for granted becomes noticeable again. This is the quiet function of absence. It teaches others to look with clearer eyes. From a Stoic view, absence is not a strategy, but a natural consequence of self-respect. It is the space created when one chooses harmony over pursuit, discipline over impulse. You are not withdrawing to provoke attention. You are simply allowing reality to unfold without interference. That calm restraint often commands more respect than any attempt to persuade or impress, because respect, like attraction, cannot be demanded. It must be earned through consistency, composure, and the quiet dignity of self-control. When you step back, people are forced to confront what your presence once gave. They sense the stability, the patience, the understanding that is no longer within reach. In time, that recognition creates a form of respect that no argument ever could. Absence becomes a silent reminder of your value, not through display, but through contrast. Yet, Stoicism reminds us not to make absence a weapon. It loses its truth when it's used to manipulate. The purpose is not to punish, but to purify, to return balance to an interaction that has leaned too heavily on emotion or attachment. Through absence, you practice detachment. Through detachment, you rediscover freedom. When you no longer fear being unseen, you begin to embody true strength. Respect, then, is not something she gives back. It's something you restore within yourself first. And from that inner respect, all genuine connection begins anew. 6. The calm that reawakens curiosity. There is something quietly powerful about a man who remains calm when everything around him invites reaction. In the aftermath of distance or misunderstanding, most people rush to prove, explain, or plead. Yet calmness, when it is genuine, carries a different kind of message, one that words could never deliver. It says, "I am at peace with what is," and that peace draws curiosity like a flame draws light. When someone expects you to crumble, your composure unsettles their expectations. It creates a pause in their mind, a moment of reflection. What changed? Why is he not affected? That is the quiet reawakening of curiosity, not born from manipulation, but from presence. The Stoic understands that calmness is not a tactic. It is a virtue. It reflects inner discipline, acceptance, and the freedom that comes when one's worth is no longer defined by another's. Attention. Human nature is drawn to what feels stable. In a world full of noise and restlessness, stillness feels rare and therefore magnetic. When you remain calm, you show that your emotions serve you, not the other way around. You become a reflection of balance in a time of uncertainty, and balance to the weary mind feels safe to return to. This calmness doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care wisely. You act through reason, not impulse. You speak when it adds harmony, not confusion. You give space for understanding to mature. In that space, curiosity often blooms naturally. She begins to sense the difference between a man who chases peace and one who embodies it. So when silence lingers and emotions rise, return to stillness. Let your calmness speak where words woodenly clutter. In that tranquility, the connection begins to remember why it once felt drawn to you. 7. Why detachment attracts strength. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many see it as coldness or indifference. But in truth, it's one of the highest forms of emotional strength. It is the ability to care without losing balance, to love without surrendering your peace. In a world driven by reaction, detachment is quiet power, the space between impulse and understanding. When you practice detachment, you stop trying to control what cannot be controlled. You no longer chase approval or fear absence. Instead, you act with virtue, guided by reason rather than desire. This steadiness is what makes detachment magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who remain whole within themselves. They sense the calm, the self-sufficiency, the freedom that doesn't depend on constant reassurance. In relationships, emotional dependence often disguises itself as devotion. We hold tightly, thinking it proves love, when in truth, it only reveals fear. Stoicism teaches that true affection must coexist with freedom. Otherwise, it becomes possession. Detachment allows both people to breathe, to see clearly, and to choose rather than cling. It transforms love from a need into a choice, renewed by clarity each day. Strength grows in that space of acceptance, the understanding that loss, like gain, is part of nature's rhythm. When you stop resisting change, you begin to flow with it. That flow doesn't push people away. It often draws them nearer, because peace is rare and deeply felt. Detachment then is not distance. It's inner order. It's knowing who you are when everything around you shifts. It's standing still while others search for ground. And from that stillness, others sense a quiet strength that words could never create. The kind that attracts not through effort, but through the calm gravity of self-mastery. 8. The shift from needing to knowing. There comes a point when you stop asking, "Will she come back?" and begin asking, "What have I learned?" That is the quiet shift, from needing to knowing, from craving outcomes to understanding yourself. It's one of the most liberating transitions a person can experience, and Stoicism calls this movement the return to reason. Need is heavy. It anchors the mind to uncertainty and turns peace into a hostage of desire. When we need someone's return to feel whole, we hand over our freedom. But when we begin to know, to see clearly, to understand the nature of change, we claim that freedom. Knowing accepts what is while needing resists it. Knowing leads to harmony. Needing feeds confusion. The Stoics remind us that our peace depends not on what happens, but on how we meet it. To shift from needing to knowing, we must practice detachment from outcomes. This doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we care wisely with discipline and perspective. We no longer act from desperation, but from virtue. We no longer chase what is uncertain, but cultivate what is within our control. Our character, our composure, our reason. In love, this shift changes everything. You stop trying to persuade or prove. You begin to live from a quieter truth that your worth is not waiting for someone's return. It already exists within your steadiness. This clarity invites respect, not because you demand it, but because peace radiates a strength that cannot be ignored. To know is to trust in life's rhythm. To understand that every loss, every silence, every turning away carries a lesson meant to shape you, not to break you. When you reach that knowing, you no longer seek closure from others. You find it gently within yourself. 9. The quiet return of attention. When you stop reaching out, when your focus turns inward and your energy settles, something subtle begins to shift. The noise fades, and in that quiet, attention often finds its way back to you. Not because you demanded it, but because peace has a way of drawing curiosity. This is what the Stoics understood well. What is steady attracts. What is desperate repels. The quiet return of attention is not magic. It's nature. People are drawn to calm the way a weary traveler is drawn to shade. When your emotions no longer swing wildly, when your actions flow from reason rather than reaction, you become a source of stability in a world filled with restlessness. Others notice, even if they don't speak of it. The same person who once pulled away begins to feel a gentle curiosity, not forced, not manipulated, but quietly awakened. This return is not about victory or validation. It's about the harmony that appears when you no longer resist reality. The Stoic approach teaches that when you stop trying to control outcomes, you make space for things to unfold naturally. Your detachment becomes your strength. Your composure becomes your quiet message. Often, attention returns when you no longer seek it. That's the paradox of peace. The less you chase, the more things align. When she senses that your calm isn't an act, but a state of being, something shifts in her perception. She begins to see not the man who lost, but the man who found himself again. So, let the quiet speak for you. Let your stillness do what words never could. If her attention returns, let it meet a version of you that no longer needs it to feel whole. A version that stands anchored in freedom, discipline, and quiet confidence. When she comes back, stay unmoved. There is a quiet irony in life. When you finally stop reaching, what was once running often turns to return. And when she does, your response will reveal more about your growth than any words you could say. The moment she comes back is not a test of her sincerity. It's a test of your stillness. In Stoic thought, the true victory is mastery over oneself. So, when her presence reappears, don't let the old emotions rush in to reclaim the space you fought so patiently to clear. Breathe. Observe. Remember what peace taught you in her absence. Detachment doesn't mean you must reject her. It means you receive her without losing your balance. You listen without attachment to outcomes. You care without surrendering your composure. And you act with reason rather than impulse. It is easy to confuse love with longing, but the Stoic understands that love rooted in virtue seeks harmony, not possession. If her return is guided by respect, by renewed clarity, then it may grow again. But if it's born from uncertainty or nostalgia, let it pass like a wave that no longer needs to pull you under. Your peace is no longer negotiable. It's the ground on which your life stands. When you remain unmoved, you show that your strength was never about indifference. It was about discipline. You've learned that happiness isn't granted by another's presence, and therefore cannot be taken by their absence. That realization frees you from the endless cycles of chasing and waiting. You begin to love not from need, but from understanding. So if she returns, let your calm welcome her, but let your wisdom guide you. Do not cling to the past or rush to reclaim what time has already reshaped. Simply be still, present, grounded in reason. The world belongs to those who no longer beg it to stay the same. And in that quiet, she'll see it. No arrogance, not pride, but peace. The kind that cannot be taken away. The kind that draws people back, not through effort, but through essence. That is where the journey ends, not in winning her back, but in winning yourself. Conclusion. Here's a truth that may sound controversial, yet deeply stoic. Sometimes the greatest act of love is not fighting to keep someone. It's allowing them to leave without losing your peace. Because love without freedom is attachment, and attachment without clarity is suffering. If this message spoke to you, I'd love to hear your reflections. Have you ever found strength in letting go, or peace in stillness? Share your experiences in the comments. I read each one carefully, and I genuinely like to connect with you. Your perspective might be the calm someone else needs to hear.